State.
And Madam Chidim. Right Honorable Catherine Gotani-Hara, MP, Speaker of the National Assembly. Your Lordship, Honorable Rosine Zikamanda, SC Chief Justice, Honorable Deputy Speakers, Honorable Leader of the House, Honorable Cabinet Ministers and Deputy Ministers, Honorable Justices of Appeal and Judges of the High Court, Honorable Leader of Opposition, leaders of political parties represented in Parliament, honorable members of Parliament, His Excellency Benedicto Martin Mashiva, Dean of the Diplomatic Corps and heads of diplomatic missions, Mr. Zanga Zanga Jikosi, Secretary of the President and Cabinet, senior government officials, distinguished invited guests, ladies and gentlemen. Madam Speaker, if I may, allow me to begin by taking a short trip down memory lane. This third day of February is the second anniversary of a historic ruling by the High Court of Malawi, which sat as a constitutional court to examine the state's conduct of the 2019 presidential election. Like all Malawians, I remember that day like it was yesterday. The most enduring memory I have from that day is of Dr. Chilima and I walking into that crowded courtroom, knowing that we were not merely there as petitioners, but as servant leaders carrying upon our shoulders the weight of a nation's hope for justice. In a 500-page judgment whose summation took over 10 hours to deliver, the 5 justices of the High Court not only unanimously nullified the 2019 polls on account of widespread illegalities committed therein by the state, but they also ruled that the state's reckoning of what it means to win a presidential election by a majority had been unconstitutional for over 2 decades. For this reason, the court further ruled that a fresh presidential election to be held within 150 days, making the June 2020 presidential election the first in which only the candidate with over 50% of the people's vote would be declared victorious. These 3 consequential orders of the court were not only celebrated by Malawians, but were also upheld 3 months later by a unanimous ruling of the Supreme Court of Appeal and accorded international recognition 5 months after that. Madam Speaker, on that February day, the electoral system of this country was fixed forever. It was fixed radically, and it was fixed legally. The fix happened because Dr. Chilima and I presented our grievances to a credible and competent court whose institutional independence was indisputable and whose integrity and courage in the face of corruption and intimidation was uncompromising. But it also happened because in presenting our grievances, Dr. Chilima and I publicly confronted the structural, administrative, and legislative gaps of a state institution that had allowed its agents to corrupt its operations. Truth be told, even though what courts did to fix the dysfunctional electoral system is celebrated worldwide, we as a nation have never truly had an opportunity to express to them our thanks. I believe that this anniversary of that ruling is a God-given chance for us to do so. The justices who fixed that broken electoral system are here, and the citizens of all 193 constituencies are also fully represented here. I therefore ask all members of this House to stand and join me in applauding these justices for the work they did to fix a system we all need for enjoyment of our democratic rights. And now, Madam Speaker, on this third day of February, Dr. Chilima and I have walked into this august house in the same state we walked into that courthouse. We have come here carrying new weights on our shoulders, burdens of the Malawian people, many of whom which require fixing other state systems as radically as our judges fixed the electoral system. You see, fixing the electoral system while in opposition taught us a valuable lesson. Lessons about what it would take to fix other broken and corrupt state systems, whether it be the food system for achieving food security, or the economic system for creating wealth, or the industrial production system for creating jobs, or the social and civic system for expanding and safeguarding freedoms, or the education and health systems for human capital development, or the governance system for delivering quality and timely public services to Malawians, or the justice system for fighting corruption and crime, or geopolitical system for the global advancement of our national interests. One lesson we learned is that even with the change of leadership at the helm of the state institution, even with good programs within that institution, even with the good intentions of those who work in that institution, and even with goodwill towards the work of that institution will still fail to deliver on its mandate if the broken and dysfunctional system within which it operates remains unfixed. So for us to build a new Malawi, we need both an overhaul of our dysfunctional systems and an undertaking of good programs by good citizens within them. Doing both at the same time is no easy task, nor has it been done before, which is why our efforts to fix the systems have faced fierce resistance from those who benefit from the status quo. One effect of this fierce resistance against our efforts to fix state systems has been the delaying and disrupting of our programs, triggering short-term pressures that make some people lose sight of the great strides we're making. To account for these strides toward our long-term priorities, the systems we must fix to achieve those priorities and diffuse the short-term pressures we face in the course of doing so, I have titled my address today, Fixing the Systems to Deliver Long-Term Priorities and Diffuse Short-Term Pressures. In balancing our attention between long-term priorities and short-term pressures, we must resist the despair of thinking that Malawi is a glass half empty. The truth is that Malawi has so many national treasures than other economies that are doing better than ours. All we need to do is to translate our national treasures into national transformation so we can fix our broken systems. In fact, my dream is that by the time our administration is done, it will be remembered as the administration that has the systems to usher this country into a new future. Fixing the systems is the bridge to a future tourism industry around natural resources like Lake Malawi, Mulanje Mountain, Majeda Game Reserve, Kasungu National Park, Nyika Plateau. Fixing the systems is the bridge to a future manufacturing industry around agricultural products like maize, groundnuts, pigeon peas, soya, tea, mangoes, bananas, sugarcane, tomatoes, hemp, and tobacco. Fixing the systems is a bridge to a future creative industry around the musical, artistic, sporting, and artisanal talents of our youth. Fixing the systems is a bridge to a future civil service that is so free of corruption that it delivers roads that do not wash away when it rains, hospitals that do not increase a patient's chance of dying of curable diseases, schools that do not produce unskilled graduates, and a police service that protects citizens without harassing or extorting them. Madam Speaker, if our fiscal space was limitless, we would be fixing all state systems at once. But since our fiscal space is limited, I stood here 9 months ago and announced that we would first focus on fixing the systems for achieving and accelerating our 3 priorities over the next 3 years. Firstly, I announced that we would be fixing the economic system in order to create wealth for Malawians. Second, I announced that we would be fixing the production system to create jobs for Malawians. And thirdly, I announced that we would be fixing the agricultural system to achieve food security for Malawians. Additionally, Madam Speaker, you will recall that I also announced some areas we would be investing in to speed up our progress towards wealth creation, job creation, and food security. The 3 areas I singled out as accelerators were human capital development, infrastructure development, and digital governance development. These 3 priorities and their 3 accelerators were chosen in line with the Malawi 2063 vision to turn Malawi into an inclusively wealthy and self-reliant middle-income economy, which we launched a year ago. In line with the first 10-year implementation plan we launched 3 months ago, and in line with the 2-year socioeconomic recovery plan we announced just over a month ago. And since these plans must be implemented while also fixing broken systems and an economy that are failing to withstand the ravages of COVID-19 pandemic and natural disasters, I established a Presidential Delivery Unit in my office, and its mandate is to fix dysfunctional systems in order for progress towards our goals to be made. I can report that within 4 months that my delivery unit has been addressing systemic bottlenecks. So much has been accomplished already in various sectors. The Presidential Delivery Unit is a big success and has kick-started routine tracking and follow-ups with MDAs responsible for delivering on key projects. So far, the PDU has brought together more than 140 people from 40 different organizations, working together to fix system failures and get projects meant for serving Malawians back on track. Of the 192 projects we assessed, 104 were prioritized and worked on. One example is the construction of the COMESA Competition Commission and the COMESA Federation of Women in Business Complexes. Malawi won the bid to host the two regional institutions in 2013, which would bring $110 million in investment and create 2,000 jobs. But bureaucratic system failures left the project stuck on paper and in meetings for 8 years. We fixed those system failures, and now construction is scheduled to start this coming fiscal year. Another example is the Nchalo Greenbelt Limited, which is implementing a cotton irrigation project worth 18 billion Malawi kwacha in investment, with the potential to benefit 20,000 farmers and develop 10,000 hectares of land. Because we fixed the system failures that were holding it back, the project is now back on track towards completion by June 2024. Similar systemic failures have been delaying progress on the 350 megawatts Mpalamanda hydro plant, a $1 billion investment. We met with stakeholders and identified the systemic failures that need fixing, and now we are on the move. Now, Madam Speaker, I'm happy to report the progress we have made towards achieving our three priorities as a direct result of intervening to fix system failures standing in the way of progress. Progress on achieving our priorities. First, progress towards wealth creation, macroeconomic performance. Madam Speaker, since the first of our stated three priorities is wealth creation, let me start with an overview of the economic performance of the country in the 2021-22 fiscal year, beginning with a bird's-eye view of the macroeconomic context. Gross domestic product, GDP growth. In 2021, the Malawi economy is estimated to have grown by 3%, up from 0.8% in 2020. This higher growth was attained in spite of the continued negative impact of the COVID-19 pandemic because of timely and effective government interventions. Among many of these interventions, the Affordable Input Program, AIP, led to improved output in maize and other subsidized agricultural commodities, which boosted the growth of the agricultural sector in general. Improved energy production following the commissioning of the solar farm in Salima and the rehabilitation of Tedzani Power Station and Nkula Power Plant contributed to GDP growth both directly and indirectly through boosting manufacturing and irrigation activities. Government interventions to contain the spread of COVID-19, including vaccinations, also contributed to the rebound of the economy. Monetary performance, inflation. Madam Speaker, the significance of the rate of inflation is that it tells consumers how much the cost of living has risen by. That way, they are not misled by the rise in the price of one or two commodities. I'm the first to admit that the cost of living has gone up, which is reflected in the jump in annual average inflation from 8.6% in 2020 to 9.3% in 2021. But this rise originated from the increase in the landed costs of fuel following the rise in global demands as economies began to rebound. The weakening of the Malawi kwacha against major trading currencies like the United States dollar, as a result of reduced export proceeds and drying taps of donor assistance, also contributed significantly to the rise in average annual inflation. Additional factors created inflationary pressures are supply chain related, such as long queues of containers of goods waiting to unload, shortage of labor, and lack of critical inputs for most products. It is worth noting, Madam Speaker, that while the annual average inflation has increased, the annual average food inflation actually dropped from 13% in 2020 to 11.4% in 2021 on the back of a bumper maize harvest last season, a demonstration of the impact of the AIP in